Hi everybody, I'm Susan Mulvihill. Welcome to my vegetable garden. Well, it's time for the second virtual Hi everybody, I'm Susan Mulvihill. Welcome back to my vegetable garden. Well, it's time for the second virtual vegetable garden tour, and you are not going to believe how many things have changed since last time. Let's start with the first row of raised beds. You'll notice there's a cover on this one because I'm growing beets and Swiss chard in it. So let me take off the cover and I'll show you how they're doing. That cover is there to keep the leaf miner fly away from the leaves, because otherwise the females will lay eggs and then we'll end up with leaf miners, which are awful. Let's take a peek. Okay, here we go. Everything is doing well. You might recall that in a recent video I showed you how I thin my beets and Swiss chard, so they've got plenty of room. They're growing really great, and I'm going to put that cover right back over it to keep those leaf miner flies away. Next up is a mixed bed of our leeks and 4 rows of onions. The onions are doing really well. We have been harvesting from the bed off and on as we need them for cooking, and that will give the remaining ones more room to grow. The leeks are doing great. You can see that the soil level is up higher around them, and that's because I've been slowly filling them in. That will give me that nice long white stem, but they're doing just great. I've been growing lettuce in this bed that has the special cover over it, and they have been doing beautifully. However, because of all of the heat we've been getting lately, the plants finally bolted to seed. So I'm going to clean this up and replant it in a couple of weeks. In this next bed, I'm growing carrots, and I also showed you how I thinned them in a previous video. The plants are doing great. We're just letting them grow. Look how much our pea patch has grown since you last saw it. They are growing beautifully. We have been harvesting all sorts of pods off of them. The variety is Green Arrow. I heartily recommend it. It's very prolific. The funny thing is that I would say these are at least 4 feet tall, and the seed packet said they would be 24 to 28 inches tall. So it underscores the need for a tall, sturdy support so that they can all grow up off of the ground. So we have been harvesting these quite a bit in large stainless steel bowls, and so they are definitely being productive for us, and they're so delicious. This is the bed where we're growing our garlic and shallots. Everything is doing really well. These are all a hardneck garlic, and they already have formed their scapes, which are those curlicue stems with a bud on the end, and we have clipped them all off once they've formed that complete curlicue, and that's because we don't want them to flower. We want them to produce a large bulb to harvest later. So we clipped them off, and we did use them in some different dishes because garlic scapes are delicious, so you never want to just toss them away. The other thing I should point out is that we wait until about the bottom 4 leaves have completely died and turned brown before we harvest them. I get a lot of questions about that, and so that's the timing. When you dig them up, be sure to dig them up very carefully rather than just pulling them out of the ground, because you don't want to damage the bulb. Here's another onion bed that we've been harvesting from, and they are growing really nicely. And yes, here's another onion bed. So this one is Stuttgarter. This is a variety that I grew last year. It keeps really well, and we have been really happy with them. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I planted 5 dahlia tubers in this bed, and 4 of them are doing great. The 5th one, right when it was emerging through the soil, the quail came along and nibbled all the leaves back. I was really irritated about that, and so I thought, well, it'll sprout again, which it did not. I don't know why it isn't, but I put a little wire cloche over it to protect them. But I want to show you 2 other things about this bed that are interesting. The first thing is, look at the holes in this leaf. That is not insect damage, it's actually hail damage. So about a week ago, in the middle of the night, we had quite the hailstorm, And I later heard folks say that they were ping pong ball size. Well, no wonder they caused some damage. I'm not sure how big the hailstones were here, but obviously they sliced through some of the leaves, and you know, there's nothing you can do about it. But the other thing I wanted to show you is the leaves on this poor zinnia plant. You know, I put these in this garden to attract pollinators and also to add some beauty to it. But the leaves have been skeletonized by earwigs. Isn't that awful? So what I'm doing about it is, first of all, I have a couple of types of traps set. I have some damp rolled up newspaper sections just on the soil surface because earwigs are nocturnal. So during the daytime they like to hide in moist areas. So I'm hoping that will work. And of course it's so dry I'm going to need to re-moisten them this evening. And then the other thing is a small container that has a snap-on lid. I have punched small holes into the lid, and then there's a couple of inches of vegetable oil plus a splash of soy sauce to attract the earwigs. They go in the holes, fall into the oil, and drown. So I'm trying those two methods. There is one other thing I did last night, and that was I took some Sluggo Plus, which is a type of slug bait that also has spinosad in it. And spinosad is toxic to earwigs. It's just a little bait on the soil surface, probably hard for you to see, but I'm hoping that will also work in addition to the traps. In this bed I have 2 Taver artichoke plants growing, and they are suddenly putting on a lot of growth. Some big duck yellow marigolds, I just love those. This is a grape tomato that I put into this cage here because I ran out of room in my tomato bed. And then more zinnias on this side, which actually are faring better. I don't know what it is about that other bed. And now to the section of the veggie garden that everybody loves. This is our pole bean arbor that's made with a series of 4 individual trellises. I'm growing musica pole beans up it. And if you look closely, you can see that this one has made it past the center point, and this one just about has. So they are really putting on the growth, and I even see some tiny little flowers, so I know beans are coming soon. On the north side of the bean arbor, I'm growing several celery plants. We love growing our own celery. It's very simple, and they are so delicious. And then there's also some leftover onions that we poked in, along with a sunflower on the left and nasturtiums on the right. On the south side of the bean arbor, I have Fino Verde basil growing here. It's a type of globe basil. More zinnias, more onions, and then I have a winter squash. It was left over. I didn't have any room for it in the official squash beds, and I'm hoping I can kind of steer it out of the way so that it doesn't cause too much trouble. Here's the other arbor in our garden. I'm using it to grow cucumbers, winter squash, and pumpkins. The game plan is for them to grow up and over this arbor. Fingers crossed. Last year this arbor covered a couple of beds more to the north, and I felt like it wasn't getting enough sunshine. And so I'm hoping that this nice bright sunny area will make it easier for the plants to grow and vine up on the arbor. Just to the south of the arbor, we're growing a few extra tomato plants because, well, you can never have too many, right? So they're just in containers, and then we're using a combination of some obelisk supports and also a wire support. In our hoop house, we're growing 3 different things. On the left here is the cantaloupe patch. Those are Tuscan Napoli. I got the seeds from Renee's garden in case you're interested. And they are starting to vine, and you'll notice there's all sorts of little yellow flowers, which is a very good sign. Our hoop house has 2 doors, one on each end, and we keep them open this time of year to make it easier for the pollinators to find their way in, but it works great. Now on the other side of the aisle, this is where Bill's sweet potato experiment is happening. So there are several sweet potato vines growing in here. And then there's also a few extra pepper plants. Next up are our 3 tomato beds. You can see 1, 2, and 3. In the first one, we've got Chef's Choice Orange, which is my all-time favorite slicing tomato. Also Costaluto genovese, which is an heirloom tomato that I've heard so many good things about, but I've never grown them before. And then also a Pandorino grape tomato. That's something that's new to us as well. And you can see some onions in the bed also. In the next bed is Federle paste tomatoes, and the last bed has Gilberti paste tomatoes. Now, I want to talk about this red plastic mulch. This is known as red plastic tomato mulch or SCRM mulch, and the concept is that it will warm up the temperature of the soil, which plants like tomatoes really like, and also it reflects a part of the spectrum up into the plants, which makes them more productive. I've had really good luck with this. I've used it for years for things like tomatoes, peppers, melons, and winter squash. But I don't like using plastic if I don't have to, and I certainly don't like advocating the use of even more plastic than any of us deal with. So I'm only trying it on one bed this year so I can do side-by-side comparisons to see how the plants grow. I have to admit that this bed of Federle paste tomatoes is certainly looking more robust than the other ones, but I think the real test will be how productive they are and how well the tomatoes grow. This is where I'm growing squash. I've got 3 Cocozelle zucchinis and then 2 Goldilocks acorn squash that grow in a bush form rather than trailing all over the place. It's an All-America Selections winner, and I thought I have got to try that. So I'm really excited about it. It's going to be a nice gold color, and it shouldn't take up too much room. Oh, I just discovered I even have a little squash on there already and a new one on there too. Cool. There's the baby Goldilocks. And here's our first Cocozelle zucchini. Next up is the potato patch. These are Minnesota with the white flowers, and the purple flowering ones are bluebell, plus there's a couple other types of potatoes in here. Now this row is the one that I planted from seed potatoes that I got at a garden center. The other ones were leftovers from last year's potato harvest. The difference between them, though, is quite amazing because these plants are doing way better. These are the ones that I chitted or pre-sprouted, and that really gives them a running start. So I'm pretty tickled with that. Now I wanted to mention a couple things. First of all, not all potato plants will bloom, but when they do, this means that there are some lovely little new potatoes that you can sneak from under the plants carefully without disturbing their roots too much. And new potatoes are so tasty. The other thing I wanted to mention is really important. If your plants do bloom, and if the flowers turn into what looks like mini potatoes, clip them off and discard them. Do not eat them because they are poisonous. And here's a quick view of the other side of the potato patch, because you'll notice we have 5 that are growing in containers. A couple of them are regular plastic containers, really large ones, and the others are in cloth grow bags. And the plants are doing great. Now I'm in what I like to call the south annex of the vegetable garden because we have 4 more raised beds. This is the corn patch. And you know that old saying, knee-high by the 4th of July? Well, this is June 22nd. I think we have met that milestone. And I should also point out that the hail did a number on the corn leaves as well, but you know, the plants are perfectly fine, so it's just a little aesthetic thing more than anything else. This green blob is our broccoli bed. And I have been putting shade cloth over the top of it because it has been so hot lately, hotter than usual for this time of year. And I think it helps them a little bit. I read about this in Nikki Jabor's new book called Growing Under Cover, and I thought I have got to try that this year for our lettuce patch and the broccoli patch. So let me show you how the plants are actually doing under there. There are 12 plants in here, 2 rows of 6, and also a couple of rows of turnips, which we have almost completely harvested. But it is a little crowded in there. The plants grew way bigger than they normally do. And it might be the fact that I put some chicken manure in the soil a few weeks before I planted it. I think that just gave them a major boost. They're also just starting to form heads. So let me show you that. Here's one of the heads which is growing nicely, and there's about the same size head on all of the other plants as well. Of course, they've got quite a lot more growing to do. But you know, I have to admit a mistake, and that is I think I've been planting my broccoli plants later than I should be. I usually plant them around the 10th of May because I read somewhere that you shouldn't let them get badly frosted. Well, I think they can tolerate the cold a lot better than we're giving them credit for. So I've written myself a note in my garden journal to remind myself to plant them quite a bit earlier because boy, they sure don't like this heat. So if I could get them growing and developing better before the heat of summer shows up, I'm sure that that would help. Now here is what we're hoping is not a mistake. You might recall that Bill is the pepper expert in our family, and he just loves growing peppers. Well, he had decided over the winter that he was not going to use the hoop house this year, although you'll notice I said earlier how he's growing sweet potatoes in there. But he felt like he should be able to grow the pepper plants out in the garden. So that's what he's doing, and they are really struggling. I do hope that they perk up soon because it's kind of sad looking at them like this. But maybe they'll hit their stride soon. So this is the final raised bed, and yep, in it we're growing onions. So this has become the family joke this year because I got a great deal on some onion sets. And yeah, I bought a few too many, so we have poked them into every little nook and cranny that we can find. We will definitely be in good shape for onions this year. I also wanted to give you a quick update on how our green stock vertical planter is doing. You might recall that I shot a video on putting it all together about 5 weeks ago. So I've got zinnias and calendulas in the top pockets, then a ring of strawberries, bush beans, jalapeno peppers, and eggplants. Now some of them are looking a little sad because again they got hit by hailstones, but otherwise the plants are doing really well. Let me just sort of spin this around for you so you can see it. It's on casters, which is very handy. So all the plants are developing well equally no matter what side they're on. I do occasionally spin it though, and then I water it from the top. I'm just hand watering it for now. We haven't put it on a drip system or anything, but yeah, the plants are doing really great. I'm very happy with it so far. Now before I sign off, I wanted to show you this beautiful artichoke. So this is Violetta di Romagna, and there's also some little baby ones forming around the perimeter here. This is an artichoke that we actually successfully overwintered. This has happened only 2 times in the 30 years that we've been growing a garden here. So we're pretty excited about it. What Bill did is at the end of the season when the frosts were coming is he cut it back down towards the ground. He put some soil around the base, put an upended flower pot over the top, and then took some unopened bags of chicken manure and just put them all around almost as like a little insulation. And it worked. So we're pretty tickled, and this one needs to be harvested very soon, so maybe we'll have it for lunch. Thanks so much for watching today, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the tour of our garden. I'll see you next week.